Hello everybody, I'm Debbie Lonnee from Bailey Nurseries in St. Paul, Minnesota. And while I'm sorry I can't be in Morris for your Horticulture Night this year, I'm happy to be able to bring you some new plants virtually. And I am here at the Bailey Nurseries trial farm down in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. So we introduce new plants and bring new plants to the market. Some of them come through our Bailey brands. I'll bet you've heard some of them, like Endless Summer Hydrangea, First Editions plants, and Easy Elegance roses. But we also look at other people's plants, other varieties and other brands, and we test them not only in a container but in the ground so we can see the garden performance. So today I'm going to talk to you about some new plants on the market. We're going to start with some new perennials, and then we're going to move on to some new shrubs, and all these plants are hardy for Minnesota gardeners. I'm standing by Penstemon Midnight Masquerade, and this is from the Proven Winner Perennial Program. This was bred over in Michigan. I'll bet some of you are familiar with Penstemon Husker Red, which was Perennial Plant of the Year quite a few years ago, and ever since then the breeders have been trying to improve that plant. And you can see it today, and for some perspective, today is June 19th. It's in full roaring bloom. June is such a great month for perennials, but we're going to show you some things that bloom throughout the summer. So Penstemon typically is low to the ground until the flowers come up, and now they're about 2.5 feet tall with this great shade of purple. And then I hope you can notice some of the really wonderful kind of reddish burgundy tones to the foliage. So it's a very colorful plant, whether it's blooming or not. We are out in full sun. It loves full sun, so at least 6 to 8 hours of full sun a day. It's a very easy plant to grow without really any major pest or disease problems to worry about. I had to show you at least one new ornamental grass today. And this is a big blue stem, a native grass to the upper Midwest, and it's called Black Hawks. It was developed by a wonderful breeder down in the Chicago area. And this is a young plant. This was only put in the ground last year, so I would like you to imagine this plant by the end of the summer being taller than me, 5 to 6 foot tall, and having a wonderful flower and then a really cool seed head. And it is just now starting to form some red coloration on the leaves, and as it goes through the summer, that red will continue to strengthen and you'll see more and more of it, and by the fall it's ablaze with red color. So this is a background plant because it's tall. You put it at the back of your garden and it really gives you some good substance. It blows in the wind when the sun is on the flower. It's just so beautiful. So consider using a native grass in your perennial garden. Today I'm going to show you 2 new alliums, also known as ornamental onions. These are kind of new to the perennial market, and a few years ago Allium millennium was the perennial plant of the year. These have become very popular, and there's one good reason. They are so easy to grow, you can't hardly kill them. If you want to bring a gift to a friend that doesn't know how to garden, buy this one. They can't kill it. So this is a new variety from Walter's Gardens in Michigan called Lavender Bubbles. Lavender Bubbles. And while it's not blooming today, I think you can see the flower buds are starting to come up. Many of these ornamental onions are going to bloom in July, and they have these round flower heads on them, generally in shades of purple, lavender, and sometimes white. They have really interesting foliage. They look good whether they are in bloom or not. And again, it's a plant that's hard to kill. It loves full sun, tolerates dry sites, and is just beautiful in bloom. If you leave those flower heads up when they're done blooming and the snow sits on them in the winter, it really looks great. So consider Lavender Bubbles for your full sun perennial garden. Here's the other allium that I wanted to show you, the new one called Windy City. And this is a little different from the Lavender Bubbles. The foliage is more green. It's not as wide. The plant is shorter overall, and the flower color is darker. But again, it has all those great attributes. It loves full sun, it loves dry soils, it's hard to kill. So you have lots and lots of these new ornamental onions to choose from to get into your garden to have something very easy to grow. This is a new yarrow. It's called Sassy Summer Lemon. And this was also an introduction from the Proven Winner Perennial folks. And it's actually just one in a series of sassy heroes. This is the lemon yellow, but there's a red and there's some other colors. And what I really like about this yarrow is it tolerates hot, dry, really well-drained, sandy soil. So if you have a site like that, this one is really going to perform well. It's short and it's really well branched. Some of the old yarrows in the market kind of flop over. This is full, it stays upright, and it's a great bright shade of yellow. So this is a June into July blooming yarrow, great for full sun gardens. For those of you with shade gardens, I have some heuchera to show you today. Heucheras are commonly known as floral bells, and all these colorful foliar types have been developed over the last few years. This is a series that we are really impressed with. It's called Northern Exposure, was bred by a wild and crazy nurseryman out in Portland, Oregon. And there are actually quite a few plants in the series called Northern Exposure with different colors. And I have some of the different foliage in my hand: chartreuse, red, purples. This one is called black. These are great in the shade garden. Mix them up with your hosta and your ferns and your astilbe for a pop of color. Good looking foliage, and what's really nice is the flowers are coming back on these newer heucheras, and they are great for cut flowers. So go for part shade and add a pop of color. You can see these are low and moundy. They generally don't get taller than 10 inches and maybe just a hair wider. So you bring them up to the front of the garden and they really enhance some of the other plants in your shade garden. Here's another plant from the Proven Winner Perennial program. This is a Veronica called Wizard of Oz. And by the way, Oz is spelled A-A-H-H-S. It's a great play on words. It's a fabulous new plant. Upright, spiky flowers that start in mid to late June and take you through July. And if you take the time to deadhead the old flowers as they start to fade out and turn brown, you will stimulate new flowers and you'll get quite a few weeks of bloom throughout the summer on this plant. What I really like about it is how full it is, how well branched it is, and it really makes an impact. Because of that, it has more flowers as well. So this is a plant that we put in the full sun garden. It likes at least 6 to 8 hours a day. It's going to get at mature height about 15 inches tall when it's in full bloom. And it's a great bluish purple color, great color to add to the perennial garden. Well, most northern gardeners know that most perennials only bloom for maybe a week or two or a little longer, and so we have to plan flowering throughout the summer. But we do have a few perennials that give us color all season long, and this is one of the most popular, Nepeta or catmint. And Walker's Low is kind of the industry standard, but sometimes it can get a little big in the garden. So here is a new variety called Little Trudy that's a little shorter, smaller, tighter. So it's for you folks that have smaller gardens or smaller spaces. So here it is in June in full bloom. It is only about 10-12 inches tall, but it's about 2 foot wide, and that's pretty small. Now, you can really enhance the flowering on this if you do a little deadheading after the first flowers are done. So a little therapeutic pruning after work each day, and you will have flowers on this plant all season long. The catmints do like a full sun garden, and give them their space. You could use them as a little hedge or in the front of the garden. I have a few new shrubs to show you, and some of them are from our own First Editions brand. This is a new 9-bark called Fireside, and it was bred by the late Dr. Harold Pellet at the University of Minnesota. And there are a few things we really like about this plant. You've all seen the big purple leaf, almost black leaf forms. And this one you could classify the same way, but it has all these great red tones to it. So it's really a different color. It has more red. It's also not the fastest growing variety in the world, so it isn't a garden thug. It's not going to take over your garden. And as a matter of fact, when it's mature, this is about as big as it's going to get, about 5 foot tall in the garden. Has wonderful branches, has a little flower on it in the spring that's pink, and it's just finishing up the bloom here in late June. It's quite nice. And when the sun is on it, that red foliage just glows. So a great plant for full sun for smaller sites in the First Editions program. This is Sorbaria matcha ball. The common name for Sorbaria is Ural falspirea, and the original species can get quite large and spreads all over the place with runners. This is a compact form that only gets about 2 foot tall, 2 foot wide, and a nice round shape, so it's great for small gardens. Has beautiful textural foliage all season long. When it grows out in the spring, there's a nice little orangey, peachy apricot tint to the foliage that's quite lovely. So this is a plant that will tolerate full sun and a little bit of shade in the garden, and it's best for small space gardens. This is a new spirea in the Proven Winner Color Choice program. They have a whole series of spireas called Double Plays, and this is a new one called Double Play Doozy. And as you can see, it's in full bloom in late June, and this is a variety that's going to bloom for quite a bit of the summer because it is sterile. It doesn't produce any seed, and that allows the plant to continue putting on flowers throughout the season. It actually literally grows up and over itself with the new flowers. It's a nice, tidy shrub, doesn't need a lot of pruning. You can see it gets about 2 to 3 foot tall, 2 to 3 foot wide, loves full sun, but also will tolerate a little bit of light shade in the garden as well. So this is a great foundation plant for your front yard by your front door, and you're going to get great color all season long with this shrub. This is a new dogwood called Neon Burst. And as you can see, it has yellow foliage, chartreuse foliage, really bright. What's really nice about this dogwood is that chartreuse foliage does not burn in full sun. So adding a pop of yellow color to your foundation planting in your garden can easily be done with Neon Burst. Now, this dogwood is quite wet soil tolerant, so that's a nice attribute, but it also tolerates just normal soils. You can see it gets about as tall as I am, about 5 to 6 foot tall, so it's not too big. What's really interesting is that in the summer, the twigs are green, but as the leaves fall off in the fall, the twigs turn red, and then you have some fabulous winter interest with red twigs in the winter. So this has been out for about 2 years. It's relatively new, and again, it's part of Bailey's First Editions plant program. This is a new willow called Iceberg Alley. And you might think it looks a little bit battered, and it is. The last few days, we've had 90-degree temperatures, really a lot of wind. And last night, a thunderstorm came through that was just incredible. But it's going to come back up. And this is just the coolest new plant. It was found in Canada, in Newfoundland. It is hardy in zone 2, so it's so cold hardy for Minnesota gardeners. And what we really love about this plant is the silver foliage, and the battered foliage today really helps you see the silver. It's on top and also on the bottom. So this is a plant that's going to go about 4 foot tall in a Minnesota garden. In the spring, remember it's a willow, you know pussy willows, it has a really cute little catkin that has some nice color to it. And then it has this wonderful form, silver foliage. You know, we have some great silver perennials, but not really shrubs. So this is kind of a new thing in the world of shrubs, and it's a great addition to Minnesota gardens because of that great foliage and how hardy it is. So Salix Iceberg Alley in the First Editions program. Well, here's the most brand new plant I have to show you. It'll hit the garden centers in summer of 2020. And it's a new spirea in the First Editions program called Spot On. It was bred by a great nurseryman down in Menominee, Wisconsin. His name is Mike Yanni. And it's a Fritchiana type. And what I'm standing in front of are actually 2 plants growing side by side. This is a June blooming plant with just a lovely pink umbel flower to it. It does just bloom once in June, and then it's done. And then throughout the summer, you have this combination of green and red foliage, and you have these irregular spots on the foliage that are a nice shade of red. And I'll tell you a funny story. Mike, the breeder, wanted to call it Dracula's Drippings as a trade name, but we thought that was not very appropriate. So it's called Spot On. So that's my fun story for the day. What I've always liked the best about this plant is this spirea has the best fall color of any spirea I've ever seen. Shades of yellow, orange, and red flaming in the month of October. It's just fantastic. You can see it's not too big, about 3 to 4 foot tall, 3 to 4 foot wide. It's a landscaper's dream because it does not need shearing, it does not need cutting back. It's so easy to grow. It loves full sun, but will tolerate a little bit of shade. Spirea Spot On.